So I've been drawing since I was about 4 years old. I remember in kindergarten, I wrote this illustrious graphic novel in crayon about me and Mario going on adventures to save Princess Peach that ended in my eventual wedding to Sonic the Hedgehog. I remember I had to ask the adults in my life to write the words in the speech bubbles for me because I didn't know how to write yet. I'm sure they thought I was real.
Everybody's so creative.
Safe to say, as a young budding weeb in the 90s, peak Pokemon era, my biggest art influences were and always have been Japanese media, whether it's video games, manga, or anime. But as I got into middle school and my art interest became more serious, I noticed that the once supportive adults in my life started to become scornful, and I heard the same three words over and over again: stop drawing anime. While anime is more popular now than it's ever been, I find that young artists are still hearing this to this day. From bitter and nasty posts on art subreddits to literal art school administrators banning anime as a whole from their degree programs. Yeah, kind of insane considering the fact that it's 2024. Seeing as this attitude has been floating around for at least 30 years at this point, I thought it would be interesting to take a peek into the past and see if I can uncover the true source of the anti-anime art sentiment, and then refute the arguments against drawing anime once and for all. But first, welcome! I'm Amber. I am a professional storyboard artist who's been working in the industry for about 4 years now. I'm also making a game on the side, and I also make video essays on hyper-specific niche interests that I have. Early internet culture and history, animation and indie games, alternative fashion, and just whatever I feel like yapping about for an hour. My nail just fell off. Today we're going to dive deep into the hidden recesses of internet past and try to answer the question, why do people keep telling kids they can't draw anime? So I think we should start by establishing some baseline dates for context. Anime first appeared in American theaters in the 1960s via Toei's Magic Boy and the White Snake Enchantress. It was referred to then as Japanimation.
Cool, Japanimation.
However, anime, as modern fans would categorize it, didn't start syndicating and gaining popularity in America until the late 80s, early 90s. Called the anime boom by both anime historians and news outlets at the time, anime went from being something obscure and niche to a large-scale fandom, seemingly overnight. American media caught wind to this quickly, and it's interesting to reflect on the verbiage that they used to describe the phenomenon. From a Time magazine article in 1999, relax and look at the pictures. Those frisbee-eyed kids, the guys with their steel-sinewed biceps, the heroine's celluloid bosoms that defy gravity and logic, and all with spiky hair that could really use some mousse. Anime may never saturate the US market as it has the Japanese, but to brainwash kids into PokeMania, to get Cameron and Coppola looking eastward, and to win a pledge of hands off from Harvey Weinstein, well, it's a start. Finally, this worldwide cult is colonizing the US. The sudden and immense popularity of Japanese animation among kids in the 90s was often portrayed by the mainstream media as if it were some kind of weird alien creature infiltrating from the sky and placing a chum bucket mind control bucket on everybody's heads.
They make 1 out of every 3 cars that Americans drive. They've invaded our toy industry. And now, heads up, this blonde bombshell and her girlfriends have invaded the U.S. She's called Sailor Moon.
This is not entirely anime's fault, or rather, anime itself isn't the source of this attitude, at least in my opinion. Prior to and during the anime boom, through the late 80s to the early 2000s, American media as a whole had developed a kind of weird relationship with Japanese culture, viewing it fondly, but ultimately orientalizing it and othering it, leading to a pervasive sentiment in American pop culture along the lines of, ha ha ha, Japan's so weird and crazy.
We're Japanese. Let's go watch a schoolgirl bang an octopus.
어이데 낚시마대게루요. 삭산가 feel good. 미나이다.
That toe is almost dead. Well, you either go to a doctor or you leave it here. He's smiling. You like that idea? See, they love black toe over in this country. Black toe.
Someday I will collect all the Chimpokemon, then I will fight the evil power that will reveal itself once all the Chimpokemon are collected. Oh!
Lip them like this. Lip them.
Rip them?
Lip, yes.
You want me? We had a blast.
Oh, no, Miss Alex. Oh, my God. Don't touch me. Just lip me starting.
Wow, Stacy sure has a lot of cousins.
I hear she does car commercials in Japan.
Ichiban lipstick for men.
赤に対して無礼だ呼ぼれに呼ぶる本気だよ
Oh, you didn't hear? Jerry's a big star in Japan.
I don't know why. There's a 1-second clip of me in the opening credits of some Japanese comedy show.
Yeah, the super terrific happy hour.
This helmet simulates the way Asians see the world.
Nakasawa!
There was also a common through line of always comparing anime to Western animation, even in places where it was irrelevant or unnecessary. Here we see a 1999 Washington Post staff writer Stephen Hunter comparing Princess Mononoke to Disney cartoons. Think of Princess Mononoke as Fantasia set on Iwo Jima. The animation is, well, Japanese. That is to say, it is completely vivid and exquisitely detailed and convincing. Almost. Somehow, the Japanese haven't quite mastered the one trick remaining in the animation bag, which Disney aced years back, and that's the sense of motion. These creatures are fanciful, even beautiful, but somehow when they move, they don't seem fully alive. The best of Disney, say, The Great Bambi, yields a sinuous luminescence, a sense of muscle and bone moving under supple skin, a majesty. Miyazaki's hordes of animators haven't penetrated beyond the skin. The moving creatures feel inarticulate and jerky, almost weightless, particularly when played against painterly background mats. Aside from the weird Iwo Jima line that makes me think the only thing this at-the-time 56-year-old man knew about Japan was World War II, there's obviously cherry-picking afoot. Ironically, the very same Stephen Hunter who was so quick to call Western animation leagues ahead of anime has been nothing but critical of Western animated movies in the reviews he put online at the time. His take on El Dorado? The road to El Dorado plays so close to the line it leaves me a little woozy. After all, it's essentially an animated Crosby Hope picture set in a Holocaust. Man, this guy really likes to reference World War II. I'm sure that hasn't influenced how he views foreign cultures at all. Nothing in it is thought out terribly well, and nobody cares. As for the animation, it's compelling enough, but weirdly overcolored. Hint from a critic, bring sunglasses. It appears to combine the old-fashioned cell animation, that is, anonymous pen pushers drawing image by image in cubicles, with the weird geometry-intense computer antics of 10 years ago. His take on Shrek? Computer-generated imagery? Nah, old hat, who cares? Okay, Steven, so we're not a fan of anime, but we're also not a fan of hand-drawn Western animation, but we're also not a fan of Western CG animation. So which kind of animation do you like? The Iron Giant is a fabulous animated feature. Funny, touching, vivid, and best of all, humane. Oh, finally, something we see eye to eye on. I love the Iron Giant. I hated it. Oh! Technically, the Iron Giant is superb. Brilliantly colored, it meshes computer-animated imagery, the robot, and most of the war machines, with the more fluent and naturalistic stylings of the old Disney house style. It's Bambi with robots. Okay, I don't know about all that, but at a certain point, the Iron Giant, without missing a beat in charm or artistry, skews off into TULWC, and that would be the usual left-wing crap. Oh. Oh. If the persistent World War II references and the bemoaning of left-wing crap didn't make it obvious, it appears to me that in this era there's a direct correlation between people who held anti-anime sentiments and people who held maybe more conservative, xenophobic ideas of pop culture and art. Intentional or not, I'd even argue that these more conservative and xenophobic sentiments serve as the core of the don't draw anime sentiments, even in the modern era. Japan and Japanese culture was viewed as weird and fun, but ultimately still viewed as inferior to its Western counterparts. So long as everyone knew its place in the hierarchy, it was fine to keep around as an oddity or a novelty, but never to be respected as an equal.
No wonder this circuit failed. It says made in Japan.
What do you mean, Doc? All the best stuff is made in Japan.
Unbelievable.
It's also important to notice that the universal revere that many of these anime critical thinkers had for Western animation was only present when it was being talked about in comparison to anime. These film reviewers, message boards, news reporters, they didn't respect or even give a rat's ass about Western animation. They only cared when they were using it to bring anime down. And of course, Stephen Hunter was just one questionable Washington Post staff writer. They are obviously not necessarily reflective of the entirety of America's sentiments at the time. However, these sentiments stereotypes were common enough to become the key focus of many essays written by Eri Izawa, an MIT graduate who went on to work in multiple small game studios in the late 90s and early 2000s. Her old webpage she started as early as 1995 is still online and is an extremely cool look back at the beginnings of anime and internet culture. Definitely check it out if you're a geek for old internet stuff like I am. Anyway, in an article written for X Magazine, which was an online Japanese pop culture magazine that ran from 1996 to 2001, Eri Izawa states, "Now TV has picked up anime. Now the World Wide Web is filled with anime pages. Now reporters show us sensational footage of anime fans in anime-postered seclusion, apparent victims of a new mental disease from Japan. And what is the new stereotype of anime in this suddenly anime-aware age? Things have gone beyond the big eyes and big hair stereotypes. For today's pigeonhole, try the phrase big-breasted women, mechs, and lots of gore, and see if that doesn't sound familiar. For example, look at CNN. The standard for the cartoon genre in Japan usually involves a series of blood and guts battle scenes in a futuristic space setting. Battles in space? Sure, some anime have that, but the majority don't. Perhaps the biggest irony is that the big-chested women, mechs, and lots of gore stereotype seems to largely be a product of the US market itself. The market drives most business decisions, and perhaps the fact that every anime in the US seems to have lots of large busts, mecha, and blood and guts may have something to do with the demand, or perceived demand, on this side of the Pacific. Before anyone points a patronizing finger at Japan, perhaps a good look at ourselves is warranted. That is to say, the call is coming from inside the house. The negative stereotypes and the flippant attitudes towards anime and manga in this era are a direct result of the American media and pop culture's own prejudices, biases, and interests. As weird and crazy and not as good as Western animation, even though we don't like Western animation either, as the anime critics made it out to seem, it was still selling, and it was selling like hotcakes. Which gives us an excellent segue into okay, corny subtitle, but let me paint you a picture here. It's a hot summer evening, some vague year between 1998 and 2002. Me and my friend are passionately slapping our Pokemon cards against the sidewalk, recreating the anime to the best of our ability via the power of imagination. An older woman rushes up to the two ne'er-do-wells that we are and proceeds to scold us. "Don't you two know that the Pokemans have the mark of the devil?" What the fuck kind of voice is that? She rips one of our cards away from us and points to it feverishly. "See?" The woman is pointing to the gender denomination on a Nidoran card. My little anecdotal tale is just a drop in the ocean in regards to the moral panic the sudden widespread popularity of Pokemon caused in the early 2000s. While Pokemon was the primary face of this moral panic, anime as a whole was a target. From claims that the youth of the 2000s were facing a violence epidemic as a result of the excessive violence found in anime and manga, accusations of Pokemon representing Satanism by teaching the theory of evolution, to fears that anime will cause seizures and violent health repercussions, there was definitely an air of danger surrounding anime in the early 2000s that created a very loud subgroup of individuals online and even in positions of power in governments across the world who would stop at nothing to bring anime's popularity down.
A game in a sandbox turns deadly. A 10-year-old Snohomish County boy has died.
This was a tragic accident, but it was one prompted by a popular cartoon.
A Richmond Public School student is suspended over a list of classmates he wrote in a book titled Death Note.
Parents in Florence on alert after a middle school student creates what's called a death list.
School administrators didn't find any weapons on the student, but they did find this book.
It's a book called Death Note. It's kind of a Japanese-style comic book that is very dark.
He is known on YouTube as Mr. Anime, but Trace Essler is much more than a student of Japanese-style animation. This guy studied murder before becoming a mass killer. The 22-year-old is now in jail under $5 million bond and a suicide watch. He is charged with gunning down his school teacher father, his mother, and his older brother, all at the family's home.
So what is manga? Well, it's a very Japanese art form. It's really graphic novels or animated storybooks that are directed not at children, but at adults. And those include manga pornography and child porn.
Son, what is that one morning? He said, that's Pokemon. Son, I found out that Pokemon means pocket monster. They say the Pokemon whole effort is to train children how to become the #1 Pokemon master in the world. You follow it through the New Age teaching, you find out that masters are those who take control of spirits in the dark realm. So Pokemon is a game that teaches children how to enter into the world of witchcraft, how to cast spells, how to use psychic phenomena, how to put to work supernatural powers against their enemies.
In the book Pikachu's Global Adventure, which is actually a very interesting book written in the 2000s reflecting on Pokemon's sudden chokehold on pop culture as well as the moral panic surrounding it, so super interesting read if that's a topic you're interested in. Christine Ariano writes, using a web browser such as Google and typing in anti-Pokemon nets some 65,000 English language citations as of May 5th, 2003. Pokemon is variously seen as the devil, evil incarnate, a manipulator of vulnerable minds, and/or an instigator of violence and crime. Schools ban it, religious organizations prohibit it, and parents gnash their teeth over it. If one goes through the same search process using a Japanese web browser, Google and Yahoo, aside from the articles on the epileptic seizure incident of December 1997, known in Japan as the Pokemon Shock incident, one only finds a single dissenting voice. That is to say, in the Western internet culture sphere at the time, it was not uncommon for anti-Pokemon web rings to pop up with pages dedicated to telling everybody how bad Pokemon was for kids because it promotes violence. And then having imagery of Pokemon they themselves made being brutally murdered and tortured on the very same page. Gotta love that cognitive dissonance. Notably, this sentiment was only present outside of Japan, predominantly in America and Canada, New Zealand, Australia. For Dragonfly Cave, an anti-Pokemon website frozen in 1999, the most common arguments from the Pokemon is morally bad camp were, Pokemon is indoctrinating kids into Judaism/Shintoism/Buddhist beliefs. Pokemon stands for pocket demons. Pokemon teaches children the theory of evolution. Pokemon teaches children to solve problems with violence. Pokemon forces kids to attack each other over the cards they want. As ridiculous as that all sounds now, schools and government bodies worldwide adopted these beliefs about Pokemon. Schools across the US began banning Pokemon cards, accusing the cards of creating violent black markets on the playground. At the same time, a group of American parents opened a class action lawsuit against Pokemon for promoting gambling in children. The suit went nowhere, but it is rumored to have settled out of court. Saudi Arabia and Turkey placed bans and outlawed Pokemon with the belief that they promoted anti-Islamic and pro-Jewish views and conspiracies. At the same time, Christian ministers from across the globe report that Pokemon is promoting dark magic, Satanism, and evil. Christine Ariano talks about a tabloid's anti-Pokemon coverage in New Zealand. The headline of the February 11th, 2000 issue of the tabloid New Zealand Truth and TV Extra declares in bold letters, "Kids' toy is evil," juxtaposed with a picture of Pikachu. The article reads in part, Captain Thomas Felton of the Anglican Church Army says the subliminal messages found in the Japanese cartoons, movies, books, and video games is tantamount to training children in the occult. By watching programs like this on TV, children are being trained in the occult and other antisocial behavior. We need to ask ourselves, where do we want our children to learn their values and morals from? He says Pokemon promotes non-Christian concepts, such as ghosts, psychics, and hypnosis. He says it could lead to more dangerous ideas. Here's a snippet from a Texan minister's personal webpage that suggests Pokemon is teaching children to practice paganism/Satanism. Tactics such as inflicting pain through slashing, psychic power, fits of rage, and draining the life force out of an opponent, which are role-played in games like Pokemon, belong to Satan, not God. While many Christians would not allow their children to bring a pentagram or voodoo into their homes, they have unknowingly opened a door to the demonic simply by allowing their children to read books, watch programs, or play games that are pagan, and that employ principles practiced in occult worship. Believe it or not, children at an early age can become indoctrinated into the ways of sorcery. It does not matter if the sorcery is blatant or unrecognizable. Its seeds can be sown into a child's heart and mind through seemingly harmless pursuits like Pokemon. As the seeds of sorcery grow, strongholds will develop, which are often undetectable to the natural eye. Over time, such a child will become desensitized to the Holy Spirit and will be increasingly unable to discern the darkness from the light. I think it's important to remember that while these sentiments existed, I would say they were the sentiments of a loud minority rather than the true majority. Even with that in mind, I'm sure other people who grew up in the Pokemon era have at least one core memory of being told that Pokemon or anime was bad as a result of these hyperbolic news stories, especially those of us who grew up drawing anime, and it definitely plays a part in some of the anti-anime sentiment, whether people want to recognize it or not. For anyone familiar with animation and comic history in America, you'll be quick to recognize that this moral panic regarding cartoons, comics, and their influences on kids is not new. It also feels really reminiscent to the moral panic surrounding alternative fashion subcultures like goth and emo in the 90s and 2000s, which kinda leads me to believe that, similar to the haha Japan's so weird and crazy sentiment present in the 90s, Pokemon and anime's reputation being marked this way in the 2000s was primarily due to the American cultural issues at the time, as opposed to issues that the media itself actually presented. A common recurrence in many of these moral criticisms of Pokemon and anime as a whole is that they're wildly exaggerated, or presented as evil without considering the fact that American cartoons and kids' media and kids' toys participated in the same types of tactics. Pokemon is brainwashing kids and encouraging them to be consumers? It's almost like how every single cartoon made in the US between the 60s and the 2000s was made for the express purpose of selling toys. Anime and manga's hyper-violence is encouraging kids to act violently themselves. American cartoons and comics are never violent and disturbing, let alone American action shows or movies. The point is, the moral panic surrounding anime in the late 90s to early 2000s was kind of used as a gotcha for many anti-anime art sentiment holders, for when their subjective opinions of "it's inferior because I say so" stopped working in an argument. And for those without much education or experience with anime and manga outside of the radical and hyperbolized news coverage and discussions at the time, anime became an inherent evil at worst, or something simply to cringe at and not be taken seriously at best. The PokeMania moral panic created a harsh, negative stereotypes surrounding Japanese-inspired art that still exists in small pockets even today. If anime was anything, it was persistent, and despite all of the social backlash it received, its growth and popularity only grew larger and larger as we rolled into the 2010s. Not only were kids showing a heightened interest in learning how to draw anime, as shown by the plethora of how to draw anime books of varying quality that popped up around this time, but Western cartoons were actually beginning to resemble anime themselves.
I am the stone that the builder refused. I am the visual, the inspiration that made ladies sing the blues.
Water. Earth. Fire. Air.
Finally, after decades of struggle, anime had proven itself as valuable and commercially viable in the American market. And now all those anti-anime haters would just shut up and let the kids draw what they want, right? Oh. Looking back at social media, discussion forums, and art critique communities online in the mid to late 2010s, it's really not hard to find examples of both professional artists and hobbyist artists telling young hopefuls that drawing anime is a lost cause. From DeviantArt to Reddit to Facebook to Twitter, even niche fandom community websites like the Pokemon fan site Cerebeat or the Sid Meier's Civilization game fan forums, the anti-anime art sentiment continued to thrive. Common arguments against drawing in an anime style included, drawing anime was a crutch. Learning anime styles was learning other artists' shorthand, and therefore you didn't actually know how to draw. Anime art styles promote bad habits. You must learn realism before trying anything stylized. Anime art styles intrinsically have bad anatomy. While these were the outward arguments against learning anime as an art style, a 2012 post from Reddit user Priv Caboose psychoanalyzes the sentiment in a way that I think still holds up today. There are a couple reasons that I believe why anime is looked down upon by people. As someone who used to think the same way as these people, I can explain why. Lack of exposure. Many of the people who dislike anime are people who haven't even bothered watching it at all. The only exposure they probably get is through hentai or terrible English dubs that can sometimes come on TV. Association with otakus. People tend to associate those who like anime with the anime fanatics. likes. They look at pictures of cosplays, which, let's be honest, look weird if they've never been exposed to the content, and assume that everyone who likes anime probably acts like that, when in reality, watching anime is nothing more than a hobby for some of us. Association with cartoons. Cartoon has a negative connotation of being childish. So when they see that somebody likes these Japanese cartoons, they assume that the people who enjoy anime are nothing more than a bunch of cartoon watchers. Little do they know all of the dark anime that exists. Idiots/weeaboos. There are idiots who perpetuate negative stereotypes and give the anime community a bad name, setting their Facebook profile pictures to anime characters and posting statuses such as "OMG, Ichimadoku-chan is my waifu." Can you imagine how weird and geeky this looks to someone who hasn't watched any anime whatsoever? Essentially, the stereotypes associated with anime in the 90s and 2000s anime boom are still influencing the perception of anime art. And while they may come up with as many arguments against it as they want, the core is still the same. Anime is bad because of the negative stereotypes they have associated with it, which are rooted in American culture's xenophobia towards Japan specifically since at least the 1980s. The very best faith interpretation of the vitriol is just parroting anti-anime sentiments for the sake of being contrarian. Too cool for school and all that, especially with the continuing rise of anime's popularity. Now, that isn't to say that there isn't merit in the idea that young artists wishing to improve and pursue art professionally would benefit from life drawing and drawing outside of one specific style, but I'll address that later. The pervasive notion that drawing anime or manga style drawings was just simply not allowed until you became a master at figure drawing and painting grapes on the table is one I just don't agree with. Art schools, however, embrace this sentiment full force in this era. There is no end to the anecdotal stories shared online amidst art career hopefuls and professionals regarding school administrators, portfolio reviewers, and even teachers telling their students not to draw anime. Some schools even threatened to fail students immediately if they drew anything they determined as anime style for their classes, or even refused to let their students take any classes even tangentially related to anime at all, such as is the case with the 2018 scandal with Ringling College of Art and Design. Hi. Yesterday, an email went out with a list of recommended liberal arts courses for each major. The verbiage they selected makes it sound like those selections were made/recommended by the departments, when in fact, they were actually recommended by the liberal arts faculty. The individual departments were not contacted for their opinions on what would be best for their own students. One of their recommendations for the computer animation students was topics in LMST, manga and anime. As most of you are aware, the computer animation department as a major does not allow or appreciate that genre of work, and it was not recommended by us that you take that course. If you do decide to take it, please keep in mind that any work that you do in this major that has the obvious influence of that style will not be approved. Moving forward, I hope that I can help educate the liberal arts program as to the aesthetics and direction of the computer animation department so that there is less confusion in the future. In an email blasted out to the entire major, Jim McCampbell, the department head of Ringling's computer animation program, outright stated that the major does not appreciate or approve of anime as a genre, and any work that someone does in the major with the obvious influence of that genre would not be approved. Obviously, this caused quite an uproar among students that were attending Ringling at the time, prospective students, and the art community online as a whole. In response to this, he only dug his heels further into the ground. My department specifically tells applicants not to include anime in their portfolios and frequently rejects them from admission to major if they do include it. Why? It is totally formulaic. Characters look alike, color palettes are almost all similar, originality is non-existent. Combine that with the fact that the actual animation quality is completely horrible, ignoring the bulk of the 12 principles of animation, and it all adds up to something that we should shun as our departmental direction is the animated feature film industry. Anime is not animation, it is a slideshow. I enjoyed the original Astro Boy in 1963 when I was 5 or 6. Since then, my understanding of art, story, and animation quality has evolved. We need to be teaching students the techniques and aesthetics that will be sought after in the industry. Let's think about that. You stated that anime can be adapted to suit Western tastes. I disagree. Astro Boy the movie, 2009, cost $65 million to make. It made $44 million. That was a total failure. I went to see it for nostalgia's sake. Speed Racer, the movie, 2008, cost $120 million to make. It made $44 million domestically and $93 million worldwide. This is considered a failure as well, since the costs to distributor are not included in the production costs. It lost money. For these reasons, I would be shocked to see another animated feature film created in the anime genre. There isn't a big enough market for it. Animation is a business, and what is appreciated by the industry is what is commercially successful on a large scale. If the diction of the previous email shows the disdain for the style, then it was properly received. Also, side note, Why is he referring to the Speed Racer movie as if it's an animated movie? Did he even watch the Speed Racer movie? I just realized, this is off the cuff because I just realized that as I was reading that. Let me just check that again. Hold on one second. Wasn't the Astro Boy movie also live action? I didn't see the Astro Boy movie, so I don't know. Okay, no. So the Astro Boy movie was animated. I didn't see that one. But Speed Racer was absolutely live action. I did see that one because B Rain was in it and I was really into K-pop at the time. No, so Speed Racer was a live action movie. So what is he even talking about? I would be shocked to see another animated feature film in the anime genre. Why is he using Speed Racer as an argument in this situation? Because he couldn't find another one? Okay, anyway. To have a blanket ban on a subsection of animation that was not only incredibly present and relevant in the animation industry his students were entering into, specifically banning it based on aesthetics alone and not quality content or functionality of the work, there is no way that you can make the argument that this decision is unbiased. It's not a logical and solid argument. It's literally just, I don't like anime, so you can't draw it. And considering the fact that Jim McCampbell's been teaching at Ringling's computer animation program since 1995, I'd wager it's a pretty safe bet that his opinion was incredibly influenced by the xenophobic stereotypes presented about anime and manga as we've discussed earlier in the video. This sentiment is still baked into the Ringling College of Art and Design's portfolio submission guidelines at the time of this recording. Just as a little side peek into some animation history that I think is kind of ironic, back during the time that anime's biggest hater Jim McCampbell would have been an art student himself, some art courses would literally advertise in the newspaper saying, hey, if you can draw this random cartoon on the fly, you can come to art school and have a career in animation. I just think it's kind of funny and ironic because a lot of arguments against having anime in art school portfolios is that it shows a lack of understanding of the fundamentals, but apparently that only applies to anime and not Western cartoons. I'll wrap up this section with a little anecdote of my own. When I was 21, I was attending a mid-sized art school's animation program in Southern California. From day one, my teachers made it adamantly clear, if you draw anime, you will fail my class. Why I was accepted into the school in the first place with a portfolio full of anime-style art is beyond me, but I digress. Determined to enlighten my teacher beyond his stereotypical understanding of anime as big-eyed freaks with bad anatomy and choppy animation, I offered to lend him one of my favorite movies of all time, Satoshi Kon's Millennium Actress. I assured him, while some anime is lower quality than others, sure, there are some incredibly beautiful works out there that have really inspired me and that I wanted to use to inspire my artistic journey. That teacher took my DVD and I woke up in the morning to an email he had sent me in the late night hours. I opened it to find a giant wall of text, at least 8 paragraphs long, of my college professor detailing every single thing that he found wrong and bad with the anime film I had just lent him. According to him, the animation was inherently inferior to Western animation because it was animated on 3s and not 2s and 1s. The designs were bad because all of the characters looked the same. The story was impossible to follow and completely unentertaining. He told me if I drew anything like this for his class, he would not only fail me, but recommend that I switch majors to our department chair. I would never work in the animation industry if I drew art like this. I think back to this email really often, especially now that I am an animation professional who's worked on several anime-styled shows in America. Almost every show that I've worked on so far had directors that were directly influenced by Satoshi Kon's work and used this inspiration to inform the show that we were currently making. If it isn't clear by now, there's always been a strong disconnect between the anime art is bad, don't draw it types and what's actually happening in the animation industry and the world around them. The year is 2025. Anime is more popular with the current generation than America's historical #1 pastime, the NFL. Adaptations of anime, manga, and video games like One Piece, Slam Dunk, and the Super Mario Bros. Movie are smashing box offices and quickly making their place in the pop culture mainstream known. Anime is everywhere. It's all around us. From Walmart Inuyasha collabs to multiple American celebrities performing in cosplay, anime is no longer the niche hobby the media associated with weird basement-dwelling geeks. Rather, it's a storytelling media with a very wide net, with something for everyone. Even my partner's 60-year-old mother loves anime. She's a huge Your Name fan. With the walls of Orientalism, cultural backlash, and xenophobia finally having come down, you'd think that this would have squashed the anti-anime art sentiment once and for all, right? Oh. While the anti-anime art sentiment has definitely declined drastically, the ideas of the old world never die without kicking and screaming first. It's still very common to find little anime-hating trolls quick to bust out their bad anatomy cards the second they see a young artist drawing something even remotely anime-influenced, prepared to spew the same old arguments that they've been spouting since the early 90s. I spend a little time here and there browsing art subreddits and communities online, and I still see it at least once a week, and the consistent trend that I notice is that those who fight most vehemently against young artists drawing in anime art styles tend to also be the type of people who are more socially regressive overall. A quick dive into the comment history of some of the posters above reveal a lot of the same kinds of sentiments. Hatred and condemnation for Gen Z, weird talking points about making families and babies, weird takes on current political situations. In general, regressive thinking. And overall, I think that's the best word I'd use to describe the anti-anime art sentiment in the modern era: regressive. At the core, it seems that the anti-anime sentiment comes from a dated idea of what anime represents, which comes from dated xenophobic stereotypes perpetuated by American culture from the 80s to the 2000s. Those who are against anime so passionately seem almost as if they are against societal attitudes changing, against pop culture preferences changing, essentially. In response to the 2018 Ringling anime ban incident, Twitter user Richmond Lee puts it best. I used to think that teachers like this were being really dismissive of anime and manga out of ignorance, but the older I get, the more I realize that they are driven by fear. Fear that anime and manga are becoming the new global standard. Fear of being irrelevant. For the older generation of artists who stand firmly against the idea of younger artists drawing anime, I can't help but to feel that the backlash comes from a place of self-preservation. The stylistic choices of Disney's 9 old men that they grew up aspiring to be are no longer the dominant force in animation, but rather, it's now artists from overseas with names that they refuse to learn how to pronounce. Their relevance and power is dwindling, and so they cling to the past in which they could use repetitive xenophobic rhetoric to easily bat down the influence and artistry of animation from across the sea. For the younger anti-anime crusaders, it can come from regressive ideology, encouraging them to believe that something foreign to them is inherently worse. And, well, just the desire to be contrarian, because let's face it, a lot of kids just like to be edgy. With anime being as popular as it is now, it is absolutely a target for those who get a kick out of being the guy who thinks that everything his friends like actually sucks eggs. Now, let me be clear before you go and write up an angry retaliative essay in the comments, nobody is saying you have to love anime. It's completely valid to just not like the styles, not be into the medium as a whole. It's totally valid to prefer Western comics, Western animation, or heck, even hyper-realistic art styles. That is a completely valid and respectable opinion to have. The difference is when you go on contrarian missions, leaving comment after comment on young artists who are inspired by anime, telling them that everything they love is stupid and they're stupid for drawing what they love. At that point, you're beyond just disliking anime. You're acting on behalf of a bias that is rooted in racism and false stereotypes from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, disconnected from the reality of the world that we live in today. And frankly, if you are one of those kinds of people, I encourage you to examine why that mission is so important to you. And before I get into the last segment of this video, I want to be clear on one more thing. If you're one of those people who goes online telling everyone how bad Western animation is in comparison to anime, how CalArt style is just the worst, guess what? You're exactly the same as the anti-anime guys. You're exactly the same. You're the same guy. You're the same age.
We're the same age!
You are literally no different from all of the morons that we've been talking about this entire video. The ultimate lesson that we should be taking away from the anti-anime art sentiments should be that it's stupid to reduce art forms and art styles down to stereotypes that are cherry-picked to support a biased idea, usually based on discrimination of some kind, which is true for both the anti-anime sentiments and the CalArt style sentiments. Whew! Now that we've done the historical deep dive, it's time for me to lay a smackdown on all the anti-anime art sentiments once and for all. Argument. Anime art styles are ugly/bad to look at. I have a new dictionary word for you. Subjective. This is an opinion and not a fact. You are entitled to your opinion, but you personally disliking something does not make it inferior simply because you say so. I'm very sorry to inform you that is just not how the world works. Argument. Focusing on anime will pull you away from learning the fundamentals like the fundamentals like anime. Focusing on anime will pull you away from learning the fundamentals like anatomy, form, and light. Okay, so I just want to start first by saying that many anime art styles are far more anatomically accurate than Western animated art styles. Many anime illustrative styles focus more on rendering light and color than a lot of Western illustrative styles. Also, a fledgling artist should not have to be doomed to drawing only hyper-realistic portraits and still lifes in charcoal until some random arbitrary person like yourself decides that they're ready to draw something else. Someone can have fun drawing in an anime style that inspires them to continue creating while also working on their fundamentals, both in the piece that you're looking at and the studies outside of what they've shown you. Ultimately, it makes the most sense for young fledgling artists to study the artistic skill sets that will most benefit them and their goals. If they're a hobbyist, who freaking cares? Let them draw what they want to draw. Let them draw what makes them happy. That's what they're doing it for. If they want to work in traditional fine arts and painting, then yeah, they should probably not be drawing anime, but I'm under the impression that people who want to go that route aren't drawing anime. If they want to work in animation or comics, specifically on shows or projects that have anime adjacent styles, guess what they should be drawing? Go ahead, take a guess. What should they draw? If somebody wants to work on an anime style show, what should they draw? Anime. Argument. All anime art styles look the same. If you draw anime, you have no style of your own. Newsflash, a good chunk of Western cartoons look the same too, from any era that you want to cherry pick from. Even disregarding that, to claim that all anime styles look the same is factually incorrect, even if we just pull 4 examples from some of the most popular anime of all time. If you're gonna make the argument straight to my face that all of these art styles look the same, there is no way getting around it. You are genuinely arguing in bad faith, and your opinion is defined by your own personal biases and not reality. Also, in the animation profession, which anime is a part of, studios want people who can fit the style of the shows that they're making, not someone with a hyper-unique style. So you quite literally need to learn how to draw in other people's styles to get work in animation. And if you want to get a job in 2024 working on action shows like Vox Machina or Castlevania, guess what? You should probably start practicing drawing anime. Argument. You'll never get a job in art if you draw anime. Studios aren't looking for this. Objectively untrue. I've seen countless animation job listings begging for people who explicitly draw in anime styles, not anime inspired, but outright anime. And on top of that, anime inspired Western animated shows like Castlevania and Vox Machina seek out artists who can comfortably draw in anime and Sakuga focused styles. These shows are incredibly popular, and that's why they keep getting made. Outside of animation, there's literally endless amounts of people looking for anime art to get done. From game developers to webtoons, from personal commissions to VTubers. Anime art is single-handedly the most popular art niche there is right now if you want to make art for a living independently. Also, I know many Americans who literally draw anime for a living, like Lee Cree, who has not only had an illustrious animation career in the West, but has animated for huge titles like One Piece and Jujutsu Kaisen. And even if all of those points above were untrue, an artist doesn't need to justify their creations by being employed to create art. An artist can be an artist and draw anime simply for the joy of drawing what they love. Their passion in art does not need to be validated by your capitalistic expectations to be something worth doing. Argument. If you draw referencing anime, you'll be copying all of the anime's mistakes without the underlying knowledge. Did you know that eyes don't look like this in real life? Did you know that hair doesn't look like this in real life? Did you know that cartoon characters are not drawn 100% anatomically correct? It's called stylization and the simplification of shapes, my dude. And as I just mentioned a few moments ago, this is actually something that is extremely critical to study as an artist, especially as an animation artist. A big shocker to the anti-anime stance takers out there, hyper-realistic anatomy and rendering are not the only skill sets an artist needs to make appealing art. In fact, being able to only draw hyper-realistically will be something that prevents you from getting a job. Learning someone else's shorthand is not a bad thing. This is actually a requirement to work in many professional art spaces like animation. In many of my professional animation jobs, I was given the advice by my directors to do master studies of anime screenshots. This is so I could learn how to stylize the anatomy that I learned from life drawing in a streamlined and consistent way. Stylization choices are a part of doing art as well, and they can be their own beast to learn. You aren't necessarily going to be a good animator just because you can draw cool, hyper-realistic figure drawings from life. You need to be able to adapt to the style and shorthand of the show that you're working on, which comes from drawing in the style of the show that you're working on or wanting to work on, including anime styles. And quick caveat, I'm not saying that drawing non-anime art isn't important for studying and grasping the material that you're drawing. I definitely think it's a very good idea for fledgling artists to draw from observation of bodies and objects in the real world, if their intention is to improve beyond just drawing for fun and for themselves, and if they want to pursue it professionally. But to suggest that a student referencing the way that anime draws faces or bodies is setting them up for failure is an incredibly bad faith take. How do I know it's bad faith? Simple. Would this argument still apply if the student was referencing non-anime but highly stylized Western artists like Glenn Keane or Chris Sanders? The last time I checked, bodies didn't look like this either. And now a speed round of some of the stupider arguments that I've read or remembered while researching for this video. Argument: anime isn't real art. Subjective! Anime is animated on 3s and 4s, therefore making it inferior to Western animation. Subjective! Anime isn't profitable in the Western market. Objectively untrue. Anime art is easily replicable. It's almost as if that's the point, because it's being animated by hundreds of people who all need to draw the same character consistently. Anime art is unrealistic looking. It's a cartoon! Anime is just a crutch for young artists who don't know how to draw anything else. This just in, beginner artists draw the things that inspire them to make art? Oh my god, the humanity, what are we gonna do? Ah! Because of this abhorrent and vicious crime against humanity, the world will now end in 3 days. Frankly, I could go on and on, but at some point, all of the counter-arguments against anime begin to get really repetitive. Let's wrap this video up and just get to the point. Here's my final takeaway. Anti-anime art style sentiments have a root in xenophobia, racist stereotypes, and moral panic, and that is backed up by historical evidence. In the modern era, most arguments against anime art styles are completely defunct. There is a market for it here in the West, and it's presently one of the biggest entertainment markets in the world. Even with this in mind, the anti-anime art sentiments are still present, even if just a little, usually by older artists who are clinging on to their stereotyped idea of what anime was in the past. The negative stereotypes and viewpoints that they hold are factually incorrect and very easily refutable with even the smallest amount of research. In my opinion, young artists who specifically have the aspirations to work on anime adjacent projects like anime style shows and comics should absolutely be doing style studies and master copies of the anime that inspires them. However, young artists who are learning to draw and hope to be a professional one day should probably also study art foundations at the same time. Art foundations are something that will improve anyone's art, whether they draw anime or cartoons or hyperrealism, because, well, they're foundations. A strong foundation makes a strong house, after all. Having good foundational understanding of form and light and perspective and anatomy and shape and line, all of that will make your anime art even better and look even closer to the quality of the anime artist that you're inspired by. And to the anime haters, nobody's saying you have to love anime. You are fully entitled to your opinion on it, even if you think it's the ugliest thing on earth and you think Don Bluth or Chris Sanders' work is infinitely better. That's cool. Nobody's arguing with that. You're allowed to think that. I respect that. That's, good for you. However, if you are so actively hateful of anime to the point where you are just turning a blind eye to the fact that the modern animation industry is heavily influenced by anime, you're an asshole. If you're using your hate of anime to justify harassing artists who do like anime online, you're an asshole. If you're turning a blind eye to the fact that anime is literally more popular with Gen Z than the NFL, and still telling young hopeful artists that there's no market for anime in the West, you're an asshole. And if you hate anime so much that you are going out of your way to argue with your students via email or shame and harass young hopefuls looking for constructive criticism on their anime adjacent drawings online, you're a raging asshole. Take a moment to reflect on that. And remember, kids,
it's okay to not like things. Don't be a dick about the things you don't like.
Hey, it's Post-Edit Amber here. Thank you guys so much for watching the whole video. I am still really new to this whole video essay thing, so sorry for the audio and video glitches. I think I should have those resolved by next time. If you guys have any other feedback on things that you liked about what I did or things that I could do better, go ahead and leave that as a comment down below. I want to try and do a new video at least once a month if I can. It just kind of depends because I'm still experimenting and trying to find my voice in regards to how much comedy I put in each video, if I like this sort of old internet deep dive format, I don't know. You know, I also work full-time making cartoons and I'm making a game on the side, so time's a little limited. I'll do my best. My next few videos will probably be much shorter than this one and much simpler topics. If there's anything you'd like to see me cover in the animation, indie games, old internet, or alternative fashion world, let me know in the comments too. And if this is the first time you've ever seen me on the internet, hello! I'm most active on Blue Sky, but I have a TikTok as well. Slap that little subscribe button if you want to, and I will see you next time.